Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents S is for Second Chance by Annie J. Rose. Narrated by Wayne Mitchell and Meghan Kelly. Chapter 1. Devin. Perfect. Everything was going absolutely fucking perfect. I was at the height of my career. The new launch was going off without a hitch. Everything was going exactly as it should, and yet I was in a pissy mood. I moved through the crowd of men in tuxes, most of them owned and not rented. Women were wearing fancy gowns and dresses that showed off all their assets, with their status of wealth obvious by the jewelry they wore. There was a real who's who in New York City, with plenty of journalists to document every move. This ballroom of one of the best hotels in the city had been decked out to exude elegance, class, and, of course, wealth. Thousands of twinkle lights hung from the ceiling, with iridescent gossamer draped over the walls, creating a shimmering effect. Catering staff milled around the room, dressed in staunch white shirts with black slacks, each of them skilled professionals when it came to moving without really being seen. The food was exquisite, and the champagne freely flowing. No expense had been spared. We had set out to impress our colleagues, competition, and potential business partners. We had succeeded. I smiled and nodded as I moved through the crowd. I could mingle and schmooze with the best of them, but I had been doing it all night. I needed a break. I needed a moment to breathe something other than cloying perfume and powerful cologne intermingling with the scent of herbs coming from the appetizers being carried around on silver trays. A flash went off, nearly blinding me and stopping me dead in my tracks. "Devin!" someone shouted. "Mr. McKay, can I get a picture?" I pasted on a fake smile and turned to my left to face the massive flash mounted atop a camera inches from my face. "I believe you just did," I said coolly before continuing on my way. I wasn't being rude, but I had taken enough pictures over the last 2 hours to last me a lifetime. I was still seeing spots in front of my eyes. I had posed with all the movers and shakers in the industry. I had shaken hands while being photographed with fellow investment partners and kissed the cheek of damn near every woman in the gala while it was captured forever in a digital image. Devin McKay had played his part. I straightened the bow tie of my own tux as I scanned the crowd, noting every person in attendance and making mental notes about who had networked with whom. I was gathering intel, preparing for my next move. All of us were. It was why we all attended events like the one I was putting on. I could feel the energy, and it was all positive, but it was doing nothing to ease the feeling that something wasn't quite right in my world. It was like someone running a cold fingertip down my spine. Nothing too ominous, but simply not right. I knew what it was, but I'd been trying to ignore it. Tonight was one of the best nights of my life. The biggest product launch from my company was going off without a hitch. My right-hand man, Wes Brown, and his very creative and beautiful wife, Ryan, had things well in hand. Their daughter, Ronnie, was the life of the stuffy party. I had enjoyed chasing the little sprite around and even danced with her, riding my feet for a few songs. It had been the highlight of my night. Everything was perfect. I couldn't ask for things to go any better. Yet there was that feeling that wouldn't go away. I knew what was causing the discomfort. I was having a crisis of conscience, and I didn't like it. I hadn't even done anything to deserve that feeling in my gut. Yet. Could I really pass up the chance to take down one of my biggest rivals? The man that had embarrassed the hell out of me and made me a disgrace to my father 3 years earlier. I had vowed revenge the moment my world crashed down around me, and my heart was shattered at the hands of a woman who had set out to ruin me. That wasn't something a man could just let go. There were sins to be answered for, and I was the one to make them pay. I would make them pay. But was I ready to pull the proverbial trigger? "Hey," Wes said, stepping in front of me. "Hey," I answered, my eyes still scanning the room. "This should be one of the biggest nights of your life," he commented. I offered my best smile. "It is. You guys outdid yourself." "Then why do you look like you're waiting for an assassin to burst through the door?" he asked. "Look around you. You have no enemies here. Everyone is here to support you. Get something to eat." "Why?" "Because the fucking food is amazing and because you look constipated or something." I rolled my eyes before clapping him on the shoulder. "I'm good. I was actually headed for the bar to get a drink. I think all the interviews are done for the night, and now it's time to relax and enjoy this thing." "Good. I think Ryan and I are going to make our escape soon. I don't want her feet swelling." I smiled and nodded. Ryan's pregnancy seemed to be going smoothly, but he was a very overprotective husband. "You're good to her. You two have a good night." "See you later," he said, and walked away. I did head for the bar, ordered a double of my favorite whiskey, and carried the glass out to the balcony. I needed a minute to think. I needed to clear my head and weigh my options. I stepped onto the balcony, the sounds of the city at night filling my ears. I leaned against the rail, taking a long deep breath before blowing it out and taking the first drink of whiskey of the night. I tried to stay stone cold sober when I was at events like this. I couldn't afford to fuck up and say the wrong thing to the wrong person. I couldn't afford to make a move on a woman that was married to someone I needed to stay in good standing with. I had learned the hard way that women were cunning. They only wanted one thing from me, my company, which naturally includes my reputation and money. I took another drink from the glass and let the liquid fire burn through my veins, falling into my gut and stoking the flame of revenge. I had worked 3 years for this very moment, and instead of pulling the trigger and making the move to destroy Ron Savage and his wily daughter, Ellie, I was still fucking contemplating it. I shook my head, trying to dissect the feelings I was having. Why the hell wasn't I jumping on the chance to steal the investment opportunity out from Savage? A little birdie had told me about the startup that was quietly looking for a little cash. I had done my research and found out Savage was looking to get in on the deal. It was a Hail Mary for a company that was falling apart. I could swoop in and steal it all right out from under him. It would be the final nail in the company's coffin. It would be the completion of a mission I had set out on 3 years ago. But I was hesitating, because every time I thought of the Savage company going up in smoke, I remembered the prettiest pair of deep blue eyes. I pulled my phone from my pocket, quickly unlocked it, and opened the file with the picture I looked at often. I stared at the image of the two of us together, and my arm thrown around her shoulders. She had her face turned toward me, looking up at me with adoration. I remembered the moment the picture had been taken. We'd been out on the boat, both of us a little pink from the sun and our hair wind-blown. We'd had what I thought was one of the best days of my life. It wasn't a week later when she walked out on me and took all the company's secrets with her. She'd played me. She'd had played us all. She'd pretended to be an eager young intern, cozied up to me, a man older than her by 14 years, and I fell for it. I fell for her innocent, wide-eyed stare like a damn fool. She had fucked me over in every way, single-handedly ruining the biggest deal of my career at that time. She had pulled off subterfuge that would have impressed the top spies in the world. She had walked out the door with all my hard work and delivered it on a silver platter to her scheming father. But the fucking idiot couldn't even pull it off. I had done all the legwork, and he had still screwed it up. He had destroyed the deal. The potential profits that could have been made for all concerned parties had gone up in smoke under his mismanagement. I not only had to deal with my father's disappointment, but my reputation had taken a hard hit. I had just finally managed to get my dad to give me the reins to the company, and I damn near lost it all on one deal gone wrong. Because of her. Her betrayal still caused acid to burn in my belly. She had left me without a word. She didn't even bother to gloat. She just completely ghosted me, and from the moment I learned what she had done, I vowed revenge. For 3 long years I had systematically been dismantling the savage investment firm. I was picking him off one deal at a time. I now held the final blow in my hand. I had come upon the information via some back channels I always kept open. It would be a sneak attack, just like he had dealt me. It was the coup de grace, the moment of victory I had craved. "Don't be a little bitch," I cursed under my breath. I was second-guessing my decisions because of her. She certainly hadn't bothered to think about my feelings or what her actions would cost me. I shouldn't have given her a second thought. It showed my weakness. I slid my thumb over the screen and pulled up my contact list. I pushed the button for one of the members that sat on the board of my company. I knew I could count on him to quietly carry out my orders. "Tom," I said when he picked up the phone.
"Devin, how's it going? I figured you would be celebrating."
"I am, but I need you to do something."
"What's going on?"
he asked, turning very serious. "I've got some information about a startup that is looking for some capital. It's a great opportunity. I'd like you to very discreetly make an offer, a generous offer. I'd rather not have this discussed with the board or anyone else just yet." He cleared his throat.
"I understand. Send me the information and I'll take care of it."
"Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it." I ended the call and quickly pulled up the file I'd been holding on to. I sent it to him and put the phone away. It was done. I had just hammered the final nail into the Savage family coffin. 3 years of tirelessly working to take them down had come to an end. All I had to do was sit back and watch it happen. It was what I had wanted from the very moment I realized what Ellie had done. So why didn't I feel elated? I was fucking miserable. It was her, and she had a hold on me that I couldn't break free of. I wasn't sure I would ever be free of her ghost. She would haunt me for the rest of my days. Would I ever find peace? Love? Real happiness like Wes and Ryan had? I was convinced it would never happen. Not for me. It was my curse. I had fallen for the wrong woman. I was doomed to spend the rest of my days wanting what I couldn't have.
Chapter 2. Ellie. I couldn't keep my lip from curling with disgust as I was jostled from one side to the other of the busy city sidewalk. There were so many people. None of them bothered to say excuse me or seemed to notice I was carrying a toddler on my hip with my other arm behind me dragging my suitcase. Every jostle threatened to throw off the very precarious balance I was managing. It was a cool, dreary day, but I was sweating like a damn pig. The people and the extra weight of my 2-year-old and the stupid jacket I thought I needed was too much. I could feel my anxiety ratcheting higher and higher with every bump. I inhaled through my nose, praying for patience. Lizzie started to fuss. The long day of traveling had left both of us exhausted and cranky. I was hungry. Lizzie had been snacking off and on since we'd left sunny Los Angeles, but she needed an actual meal. "Just a few more minutes, sweetie," I promised. "We're almost there. Then you can run and play." "Hungry," she whined. "I know. We'll eat some dinner as soon as we get to Grandpa's. I looked up, checking the addresses on the buildings as we passed. I had been more than surprised when my dad gave me the address. I asked why I wasn't going to the apartment on Fifth Avenue, but he didn't give me an answer. The address was another in Manhattan, but not in the same vicinity of. "This is it," I said, walking toward the door of the building. I released the suitcase, prepared to juggle the baby, open the door, and then grab my suitcase before it could be snatched. Like an angel from heaven, a doorman opened the door for me, offering me a warm smile as he grabbed my suitcase for me. "You've got your hands full." I laughed. "I do. Thank you so much." "Are you visiting someone?" he asked. "Actually, I'm going to be staying here. My father is Ron Savage. He said he would leave me a key." The man smiled. "Ah, you must be Ellie, and this little lady must be Lizzie. I have your key for you." I followed him to his small desk. He pulled out the key and handed it over. "Thank you so much." "Can you get to the elevator okay?" "Yes, thank you." I got inside, my arm on the verge of giving out, but I was not about to release Lizzie. I didn't want to chase her, and I knew she would take off running the minute her little feet hit the floor. I waited for the elevator to stop moving before grabbing the handle of the suitcase and heading down the hall. I found the right door, fumbled with the key, and managed to get the door open. "Dad?" I called out into the dark, chilly apartment that exuded a musty odor. "Dad? Are you here?" "Papa!" Lizzie called out. I smiled and gave her a quick peck on the cheek. "I don't think Papa is home." I flipped on the light and almost recoiled at the sight of a kitchen littered with dirty dishes and empty takeout containers. There were a few newspapers tossed on the floor next to the sofa and a few empty bottles of beer. "That's new," I muttered, leaving the suitcase but keeping Lizzie on my hip. I turned on another light as I walked farther into the apartment. It was big, not Fifth Avenue big, but it wasn't a hovel. I headed for the short hallway, opening one door and determining it must be my father's room before turning to the other door. "This is it," I told my daughter, flipping on the bedroom light. I scanned the room, empty except for the chest of drawers, a queen bed, and a nightstand. It was relatively toddler-safe. "Okay, you can get down, but stay here," I ordered. She wiggled in my arms until I put her on the floor. I walked back into the living room with Lizzie right on my heels. The first thing I did was pick up the empties scattered around the living room and toss them in the trash. "What the hell?" I mumbled under my breath as I looked around at the trash. My father had called me a week ago, frantic and demanding I drop everything to fly back to New York. He had freaked me out. I had taken a leave of absence from my job, packed up my kid, and hightailed it home. He knew when my flight was coming in and hadn't bothered to show up at the airport or even send a car. "Let's go look in Grandpa's room," I said, trying to make my need to snoop sound like an innocent game. Lizzie followed me down the hall once again, getting some exercise in her poor little legs that had been confined for almost 6 long hours. A shirt that I assumed belonged to my father was tossed on the bed. I opened the closet and saw a couple of shirts hanging, but otherwise it was empty. I walked to the dresser and pulled open drawers. A few leftover articles of clothing from what looked like a rush packing job. I frowned, putting my hands on my hips and looking around. Maybe he'd had an emergency business meeting out of town. "Let's get our suitcase and we'll get your toys," I said to Lizzie, who was opening and closing the drawers. After unpacking the suitcase and making use of the dresser and empty closet, I went back to the kitchen to see what I could put together for dinner. I had thought he would at least take us out. Clearly, he couldn't be bothered. "Are you hungry?" I asked Lizzie. "I want crackers," she answered. I laughed. "Let's see if we can find something a little more nutritious." I opened the fridge, took a glance, and quickly shut the door. The smell of sour milk nearly made me vomit. I had a feeling the cupboards would likely be bare as well. I had to tamp down my anger. I couldn't believe he had demanded I come home and then disappeared, leaving us with a filthy apartment and nothing to eat. I grabbed my phone and hit the redial button. I had called when we landed. I called when I couldn't find him at the airport. I called from the subway, and each time it was the same thing, voicemail. "Dad, it's me. We're at the apartment. Where are you?" I searched my contact list and found his office number. I almost never called him on the line, preferring to use his cell. The call went to voicemail as well. I didn't want to leave a message on the company line and simply hung up. I glanced around and shook my head. I had no idea where he was or what the hell was going on. If we were close, like we had been before everything happened, I probably would have known earlier that something was wrong. As it was, we talked very little. I had lost a lot of respect for him when he'd essentially forced me to go in and steal information. He'd used the information and cost me everything. He didn't care what the fallout was, and as if being used and lied to wasn't bad enough, he screwed up a deal that I had helped put together. A deal that had destroyed my life and never made the company a dime. It should have. If my father wouldn't have screwed it up, he could have made millions. I had seen the projections. I had seen the potential earnings, but he made almost nothing off the deal. When he called last week, he claimed the company was on the brink of ruin. He begged me to help. I had refused, but he made me feel guilty for leaving in the first place. I shouldn't have felt guilty, but he had a way of laying it on thick. He used his one card, my mother. Whenever he wanted to guilt me into helping him, he brought up the fact that he was all alone in the world. When she died, there had been a huge hole in our lives. It was hard to imagine a single person taking up so much space in the world that when they died, there was a huge vacuum. Her absence had been almost impossible to cope with until I realized I had to be strong for him. I had grown up almost overnight taking care of him. It gave me something to focus on, a way to avoid my own pain. It wasn't until my world was turned upside down 3 years ago that I realized he'd been selfish. He'd used me over and over. I had been too naive to see it then, but my eyes were wide open now. I didn't want to see him financially ruined. I didn't necessarily respect him, but I did love him in a distant way. I had come home to try and help him fix what he had broken, and the guy didn't even have the decency to be around. "Nice welcome home, Dad," I muttered before flopping onto the couch. Lizzie was playing with one of her favorite toys, content with the new surroundings. I watched her play. Her hair was growing darker by the day, it seemed. She had started with my pale blonde hair, but it wasn't meant to stick around, obviously. Her father's genes were stomping all over mine. Even my blue eyes that she'd been born with were gone. They were a pretty hazel color that I loved, just like his. I pulled up my Uber Eats app and browsed through my choices. I picked Italian. Lizzie loved spaghetti. It was messy as hell, but she deserved to get a little messy after the long day she'd had. With dinner ordered, I dropped my phone on the couch and headed for the window to check out the view. My eyes roamed over the city streets below and the tall buildings lining both sides of the street. A few years ago, I loved the view. I loved the city. Now I looked down and I saw chaos and darkness. Southern California was so much brighter, and not just literally. The sun had a way of making things look cleaner and fresher. I reminded myself I wasn't there to stay. I still had my place back in California. I was only in New York for a little while, until I could figure out what the hell was going on. Then I was out. Lizzie and I could not stay in the city. We were doing just fine by ourselves in Los Angeles. I had been taking care of myself for so long, I didn't remember what it was like to have someone take care of me. "Mama," Lizzie said, toddling toward me. I smiled and turned to face her. "We should change you into something comfy," I said, scooping her up and carrying her back to the bedroom. We had started potty training a couple of months ago, and by some miracle, it worked. I had put her in a pull-up for the flight, but she'd done very well. I was very proud of my baby girl. She was a very smart girl, just like her mommy. And daddy, I supposed. "All right, kiddo, let's go get our dinner," I told her when I heard the doorbell. It wasn't exactly how I envisioned my first night in the city, but then again, it was probably for the best. I was tired and cranky after the long day of travel and didn't have it in me to deal with my father. Tomorrow, I would be ready to tackle the mess he'd created.
Chapter 3. Devin. I exited the black town car, closing the door behind me and tapping the top of the car to let the driver know he could go. I buttoned the jacket of my suit and walked toward the door. A doorman opened it for me. I smiled and walked inside, pulling off my dark sunglasses and putting them in my inside pocket. Then I gave my name to the receptionist and was told to have a seat while I waited. The startup company was doing very well, judging by the size and location of the offices. The interior was nice. Not as nice as my own offices, but nice nonetheless. I checked my watch. I was about 10 minutes early from my meeting with the owner of the firm I was about to steal out from under Savage's nose. I had done my homework and was confident I had the offer that would seal the deal. It would be the final blow to Savage's company. I almost wished I could see his face when he discovered it was me that had taken him down. I smiled, walking toward one of the chairs and about to sit down when I heard something that made my blood run cold. I spun around, my eyes scanning the area. I had to be hearing things. Fuck me, I hissed on an exhaled breath. Ron Savage had just walked in, and beside him was his scheming daughter, Ellie. I couldn't believe my eyes or my ears. She laughed at something her father said, and I watched in horror, and then excitement. And then I felt the familiar desire. My blood was running hot and cold, leaving me feeling very out of sorts. God, I had missed her. I had dreamed of her almost nightly. Seeing her in front of me, I wasn't entirely sure it was real. Ron said something, and she let out another soft laugh. Watching the two of them laugh quickly transitioned my happiness at seeing her into fury. They were thick as thieves. I imagined they were laughing at me. I stepped forward, my jaw set in a hard line. I didn't know why they were there, but I wanted to take the opportunity to let them both know I had won. I knew my deal was far better than anything they could offer. I was the better choice, and the CEO, Toby Michaels, knew it. The Savages, a name that was befitting of the father-daughter duo, didn't stand a chance. "What are you doing here?" I snapped. Ellie's eyes practically popped out of her head as she looked up, seeing me for the first time. Shock crossed her features. Her father stepped in front of her, a shit-eating grin on his face as he looked me up and down. I wanted to knock the smile off his ugly mug.
"You're a little too late, McKay,"
he sneered.
"This deal is mine. You may as well crawl back to your office and tell Daddy you fucked up again."
I heard a sharp intake of breath from behind me. I glanced back to see a man with remarkable green eyes wearing a tailored suit staring at Ron and me. The man looked like he was chewing glass.
"Mr. Savage, Mr. McKay, thank you for coming,"
he stammered.
"This is a done deal,"
Ron said.
"It's mine. Go home." "Sir, we're still considering offers,"
the man said. I looked at the man, wondering exactly who he was. "You are?" I snapped, pissed that what was supposed to be an easy close was quickly turning into a clusterfuck. He extended his hand.
"I'm Toby Michaels, CEO,"
he said, his eyes glancing over to Ron, who had stepped forward. I shook Toby's hand and once again found my gaze being pulled toward Ellie. She looked gorgeous. She was wearing a skirt suit, tailored to fit her slender body and showing off plenty of leg. Her high heels made her look much taller than...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?